Trump's play for the coveted Wilkes-Booth-Hinckley Jr. voting bloc, cable news media generally missed the second dose of insanity this week, courtesy of former acting director of the CIA and avid Hillary Clinton supporter Mike Morell. And what can only be described as a rather Bond villain-esque chilling moment on the Charlie Rose show, Morell, with a sadist delight, announced that the new U.S. policy in Syria should call for the revenge killing of Russians and Iranians. Even the Rose man himself was knocked a little off guard by this statement. Let's take a listen.
Make them pay the price by killing Russians?
Yes.
And killing Iranians?
Yes. Covertly. So you don't tell the world about it, right? You don't stand up at the Pentagon and say, we did this.
Right, because announcing your diabolical plans on the Charlie Rose show is the best way to keep things covert. But Morell's kill list didn't even end there, or didn't end with the Iranians and the Russians. He's also got his crosshairs on Syrian President Bashar al-Assad as well. Let's take a listen.
I want to go after his presidential guard. I want to bomb his offices in the middle of the night. I want to destroy his presidential aircraft on the ground. I want to destroy his presidential helicopters. I want to make him think we're coming after him.
I'm sorry, Mike. I misunderstood you. It wasn't Assad in your crosshairs. It was, as my co-host Tabitha Wallace pointed out, his officer, his office janitor, his driver, his pilot, all the people that have nothing to do with him. So with Morell and Trump show, with the Morell and Trump show making the bloodlust a new campaign slogan, we had better start watching the Hawks. Week of August 8th, this has been.
Yeah, it's a little weird, and I think it's strange that we've sort of normalized this kind of rhetoric. That it's so normal that someone thinks that going on Charlie Rose is, I mean, the Trump stuff, we can argue back and forth, is that what he meant, is that what he meant? He wanted the attention and he got it, so it really is beside the point about whether he meant something or not. He's kind of vaguely incoherent, and by vaguely I mean super incoherent most of the time, so I don't take what he says all that seriously. But with Morell, it's a totally different situation. For someone to go on and say things like that and normalize essentially advocating the killing of innocent people, and to think that you're not going to kill innocent people by bombing his offices and killing a bunch of Russians. This is just mind-boggling to me. I mean, this is the kind of stuff that there was a paper that just came out, the American Psychological Association's annual convention had talked about media contagion as a factor in mass shootings. And that report had said that the prevalence of these crimes has risen in relation to mass media coverage of them and how we look at them. We've normalized this kind of overt violent language, this kind of militaristic revenge. I mean, he just laid out a plan that involves the murder of innocent civilians.
Yeah, totally.
For revenge, in order, I'm going to murder a bunch. Translation: I want to murder a whole bunch of people and destroy a whole bunch of infrastructure and anything I can get my hands on, so I can force another world leader to do what we want them to do. How is that not terrorism?
So Sean, let me throw it over to you. Is terrorism basically what this former CIA director is so excited to potentially bring if he gets put on like a Clinton cabinet? Because a lot of people are saying that he might be put on the Clinton cabinet, or be reinstated as head of CIA. Is terrorism going to be the U.S. Foreign policy moving forward if we let this guy get back in charge?
Well, you could argue that it's always been the U.S. foreign policy. I mean, you mentioned the bombing of offices and civilians. That was done in Libya in the 80s in so-called retaliation for when we alleged Gaddafi was involved with some certain club bombings, for example, and other attacks that were alleged to Gaddafi in the 80s. We retaliated by blowing up his house and killing civilians and members of his family and whatnot. So it's always been part of the policy. As far as Syria goes, he's just taking script, it seems, to me, not from the actual Syria, the current civil war, but actually going back to the 50s, when Eisenhower and the British Prime Minister were actually working on a plan to assassinate Syrian leaders and actually foment the civil war. They created what's called the Free Syria Committee back in '57 to actually create create a civil war, the same kind of situation that we're looking at now. So it's really just a policy of how do you destabilize this leader. And meanwhile that we're trying to kill Assad and get rid of Assad by any means necessary, we are still arming and supporting these various Free Syria army groups that do tend to have a lot of al-Qaeda elements, jihadist Salafist elements that are, we're supporting here in Aleppo at the moment, for example, against Assad. And it's just the complete insanity of the situation is saying that these guys are heroes and they're supposed to be fighting against Assad, but meanwhile they're also probably linked to Al-Qaeda, certainly very much of the more extremist Islamic version that I don't think most Americans would want to see in power, but they're the ones we're backing. So that's just the American policy, is terrorism.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It is that
Which
frightening.
isn't okay. And this is a guy who literally wrote the book defending the torture program.
Yeah, completely.
He helped write the report that rebutted the Senate Intelligence Committee's torture report. This is someone I don't. And this is one of those situations where when people get mad at each other during an election season and you have, Hillary supporter who will say, look, and you say, look, foreign policy, and they're like, Benghazi. It's not about Benghazi. It's the fact that she is not just associates, but plans to get intelligence and take direction from people like Morell
And Henry Kissinger. Yeah.
And that's the kind of stuff I don't want to go backwards. It's not the 50s.
Right.
We shouldn't be thinking about 1950s.
Yeah, and just
tactics.
for clarification, let me just point out that Morell's deep hatred of the Russian people didn't prevent him from going on, RT on the Tom Hartman show earlier. I think we have a little taste of that somewhere out there too, if you want to look that up.
Yeah.
So Morell's, just to pitch his book, by the way.
Yeah, well,
it's
if you're
numbers
pitching a
up on
book,
his
it's okay.
Then it's okay. Oh, good Lord.
In late July, the final 3 officers still facing charges in the death of Freddie